What's good, Reds? Welcome back to another episode of Liverpool Latest. I'm your host, Matt. Thanks for joining me on this episode. If you enjoy what you're watching or listening to, please be sure to leave some sort of rating, a like, 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform, whatever it takes to help the show expand and to show the people your thoughts. Be sure to leave that like. Also, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show because it certainly helps me out and I would appreciate it very much. You guys are dope. And you know what else is dope? This Arne Slot press conference. Usually I use these post-game press conferences to kind of clown Slot and his way of thinking and to clown the team and how badly they would normally play, but I can't do that today. Because Arne Slot said, and I am inclined to agree, that the team, quote, kept on fighting until the end. And I am inclined, like I said, to agree with that statement. The first 20 minutes or so were a bit rough. Palace kept having a press that was, giving Freddie Woodman a lot of issues at first. We looked a little bit out of sorts. I think once that first Isak goal took place, then I think that's when we were off to the races, and that's when things started to work a little bit more in our favor. So, obviously, us taking a 2-0 lead was great in the first half, or even I think in the third or something. I think we may have scored 2 goals in that first half, but either way, Isak and Robertson had 2 phenomenal goals. Palace also tried creating multiple chances. As I did say, they did win in the shots and shots on goal categories to no avail outside of that one fuck-off Munoz goal that happened, which, we still debate on whether or not it should have happened to begin with. But either way, the late goal that we had in the 96 minutes sealed that result. And the thing that Arne Slot definitely touted on, which, again, we're all gonna debate about this in our own way, shape, and form, was the Freddie Woodman going down with a seeming injury, and the fact that the goal took place. Slot strongly questioned why the play wasn't stopped. I don't think it should have been stopped. I think the play should have continued to go on. I think outside of Munoz, everybody else seemed to stop around the goal just to see what happened with Freddie, and Munoz just kicked the ball, and it just happened to land in the net because it had no opposition. So the one thing he did mention, which I also agree with, is the inconsistency in refereeing decisions. I think this has been a problem with the Premier League in the modern era for sure. Too many players are trying to take dives to make, and this goes for us too. Too many players are trying to make dives and pretending that they're injured in hopes of getting a favorable decision towards the team and them. And I am of the opinion, and so was Slot, and this is a little bullet point in my notes, that there's a belief that situations should have been handled differently, and that players fiending for injuries to stop play should be a much bigger concern than what it currently is. Referees certainly struggle with consistency, and that rule interpretations like this could lead to any sort of tactical exploitation. It's funny that I see something like this, and then I happen to go on Facebook earlier before I recorded this. I'm a fan of professional lacrosse. Okay? Little by little, I've been getting more into the sport here in the United States, or at least in North America. I'm not sure how popular it is in other parts of the world. But the NLL, which is the box lacrosse league, there's field lacrosse and then there's box lacrosse. They themselves put out a statement stating that a goal that was allowed by the referees should not have stood, I guess, after replays and such. So the NLL goes out of their way to say, hey, this rule was violated. This goal should not have stood. Unfortunately, it changed the outcome of the game, but as a result of this, the refereeing crew that was a part of that match will not referee any sort of further matches in this playoff tournament that they are currently in, because the NLL is currently in its playoff period for the championship. I think, personally speaking, while it does not change the initial result, and that one team walks away probably angrier than they would have, at least the league itself is making a stance and making a statement holding referees accountable. That can only be a good thing to help the sport and legitimize what they're trying to do in growing lacrosse as a sport, because it's still a relatively smaller sport here in North America. I wish that the Premier League and soccer in general, or football in general, would start making referees more accountable. I feel like there have been far too many times in VAR or on-field decisions that just change outcomes of the game, which are very clearly wrong. And how I determine if it's wrong, if the commentators themselves look at the replay and say, "Oh, that's not right, that call should not stand," and then nothing is changed, or that the call should be changed to this and nothing happens. If the commentators say it, I mean, I'm not saying they're right all the time, but especially if there's former players as part of the color commentary, and they're saying that's a goal that shouldn't stand or should stand, or that's a foul that should have taken place or not, I'm inclined to believe that, because they're the experienced ones in the booth. So I think the Premier League has a problem, and the overall governing body of the officials in football have a problem with holding not only players but themselves accountable, because there are far too many referees that get away with bullshit and trying to take over games. A very clearly evident instance of this for me was the Tottenham game back in, what was it, September of 23 or something like that. That game still is etched into my mind as an absolute stain on Premier League refereeing. But that's just all I have to say about that particular thing. Also, in regards to Freddie Woodman, he was delighted with his performance. This is a direct quote from the article here. He was delighted with the performance. Of course, the crucial save that led to the second goal was also something that he highlighted in his talk, and he also discussed the importance of the fine margins in matches. So, all in all, very, very solid game all around. Very well. I believe it was well coached for once. I believe it was well played by the players on the field. The one thing that Slot did talk about, which I sit here and nervously twiddle my thumbs over the news of, is Mo Salah. Now, as we all know, Salah suffered a muscle injury during the win in around the 60th minute or so, and it was clearly a hamstring issue. That's where he was holding his on his leg. Of course, the injury forced him off the pitch, and of course, the situation is requiring a much more serious enough, concern to figure out what's going to happen. He needs to be assessed, needs to be tested, things of that nature. As far as Slot is concerned, what he feels about the subject, considering Salah himself rarely ever comes off the field injured, suggests that this is a rather significant injury rather than a minor. But he also doesn't really have a clear answer as to what it is, what the return date could possibly be. He's awaiting further medical evaluations and scans. So right now, the availability for Mo Salah as we near the end of his Liverpool run is very much unclear. On the other hand, and I made a mistake and said that the manager, the Egypt national team director, Ibrahim Hassan, apparently has his own idea of what's going on, whether he's talked to Salah directly or he's getting his sources from somewhere within the club. It seems as though He thinks that there is an exact amount of time of which that is going to take Salah to recover, and that is going to be, well, excuse me, about the same time, if not after, the final match at Brentford on Sunday, May 24th. It seems like Hassan said in an exclusive statement, and this is a direct quote according to Liverpool Echo. Mohamed Salah is suffering from a muscle tear and will be out of action for 4 weeks. When asked if he will be fit enough to play against Brentford on the last day of the Premier League season, Hassan replied, "It is not possible to determine that at the moment. It depends on how well he recovers from the injury and his readiness." So, being that Salah is going to be a big member of the Egyptian national team when it comes to playing in the World Cup, naturally they're also very terrified of what's happening with Salah, hence why they're probably inquiring as quickly as they did about the subject. So it seems like Hassan has an idea. Slot was a little bit more vague. I'm hoping that there is a chance he steps onto the field in some capacity on the 24th of May, which is less than a month from now as I'm recording this video. Today is my brother's birthday, which is April 26th. Happy birthday, Christopher, who has to put up with all of my bullshit when it comes to Liverpool, because my family, I have put my family through a lot of hell, like screaming at the TV watching games, so I appreciate them very much. But yeah, all in all, it seems like the more and more news I see about the subject, the more and more deflated I feel about the fact that Salah might not actually step on the field again, and this could not have come at an absolute worst time. It seems like the football gods giveth with a win, and they taketh away from us with Mo Salah and a proper Anfield goodbye at the end of the season. But all in all, another thing I want to talk about, this is a very slot-heavy episode, as you can imagine. Apparently, there's also been some reports, according to an article I read from Sports Illustrated, that Salah has refused to rule out another summer departure for any of a couple of major players on the team. We already know Salah's gone. We already know Robertson's gone. Apparently, according to the article, it is directly referenced that Alisson Becker, or is directly said that Alisson Becker, he doesn't rule out a departure from him in the summer. So, he's acknowledged that the experience is one argument to keep Alisson, which I believe I'm inclined to agree with. But he also stressed that there are other arguments influencing the decisions to either keep him or sell him to, seems like Juventus at this point, because they're the ones that are constantly linked with him. But he also emphasized that transfers are strategic, deliberate, and of course club-led decisions, and of course needed to highlight the fact that Alisson has 1 year remaining on his contract, which the club themselves extended. So now, only a handful of weeks after that decision, now we might be gone with him entirely, and it was all for naught. All that hope that we had is now all for naught, and we are stuck with Georgi Mamardashvili at the number 1 spot, which I do not trust as far as he can throw a ball. And that's quite far, mind you. Either way, the fact that he's acknowledged this is very telling to me in several regards. Goes to show that there is, yes, a club dilemma going on with, 1, the goalkeeping position, 2, having another big name leave over the span of the summer. And I've talked about it before in that previous rant I had earlier this week, or earlier in the last week, and I believe that if Alisson was to leave, it's due to Slot. There's part of it has to do with the fact that Slot is influencing that decision by Alisson himself, not by the club, to leave, as I don't think sees much more of a future there with him at the helm. Especially considering that, 1, they're already planning to replace him sooner rather than later, hence why they got Mamardashvili last year anyway. So, or actually, excuse me, in 2024. So, I I'm a little bit nervous about that. I mean, let's also not forget that other players like Van Dijk are 34 going on 35, if not 35 already. And Endo, who is 33 going on 34 or something along those lines, he's not that far behind Van Dijk. There's not really a whole lot of players older than 30. There's a lot of mid to late 20s, maybe early 20s in there too, if we're taking teams taking from the under 21 team to play for us every now and again. But there's no real leadership core anymore now, if that's the case, because that was it. Our leadership core was Van Dijk, Allison, Robertson is probably our main guys. Underlings probably would throw Endo in there. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't put Curtis Jones, considering he's one of the more longer tenured guys. Same thing with Joe Gomez as like a second tier. But what's after that? I mean, Chiesa's probably not going to stay on the team, so I don't see him being a part of it. McAllister has also been rumored to leave this season too in the summer. Cody Gakpo as a leader on the team, that's laughable, frankly. So the fact that, again, acknowledging yet another potential departure is telling for Slot. According to this article, I'm not, Sports Illustrated maybe likes to embellish things a little bit more than what they actually are. But the timing of this could not have been at a worse time, considering that two of their main leadership guys are already leaving the team. So that is going to be something that I need to keep in mind about going forward, as far as news goes, to talk to you guys about. And, of course, we need to keep in mind of as fans, because we could be in for a very rough season next year in the goalkeeping position if we are subjected, I won't say forced, but subjected to watch Mamardashvili in net constantly, who many of us do not trust in any way, shape, and form. But another situation I don't necessarily trust is Ibrahima Konate. And it's not because I don't like Konate. Listen, he's playing like garbage all season. Yes, he's had some moments of brilliance too. Would I prefer for him to be on the team? Yes. I feel like this season there's been a lot of outliers that have allowed for him to maybe be distracted on the field. Stuff with Real Madrid being linked to that was one. The constant contract problems being discussed in the media is probably yet another. His own father passing away just a handful of months ago. So because there is so much uncertainty around what's going on, naturally, Liverpool need to look towards the future of things and potentially garner interest from other players in the center back position across the league or across football. And potentially one of those names goes by Pierre Kalulu. Now, I am not familiar with Pierre Kalulu, to be fair with you. Seems as though he is apparently good enough as far as a profile goes to be linked enough, or at least interest to intensify enough with Liverpool to be interested in him. So, looks to me that while they are continuing to work on an extension, they're also simultaneously looking to advance alternative defensive options. Now, Kalulu, who is currently at Juventus, shockingly enough, as if Serie A has not been more of a threat to getting our players this season, between Curtis Jones at Inter Milan, Allison at Juventus, and now, Pierre Kalulu, we have interest in taking from Juventus. He's been on Liverpool's radar for months. Not sure if I've mentioned this name before, but this is news to me if that is the case. And scouting reports say that Liverpool and United have received positive feedback, and the expectation is Liverpool will step up their pursuit if there is no progress on the Konate side of things. So they also might pursue him whether Konate stays or goes anyway, so that just means we have someone to reinforce that position. So who will we have at that point? We'll have Van Dijk, Konate, Leone will be back from injury, thank God. Jeremy Jacquet will be back from injury, hopefully, by the beginning of the season. This is good depth. We're at a place where we're actually getting depth in that position, and that's what I like. So there is a lot of uncertainty around Konate, and that's what really drive this whole thing. I want to say, though, that if the contract talks have progressed as well as they have been reported to have been, I am hoping by the end of the season there is a new contract in place. We have 1 month to go until everything is over. So I am led to believe, personally, that we're at a 50-50 shot right now. We're at a 50-50 shot of whether Konate stays or goes. Whether we lose him, it'll suck, yes, but at least we are now trying to make an effort to sign players for center back. And, of course, we'll be getting center backs back from injury. So that's the most important thing of all. So that is what I have for Liverpool Latest for you guys today. I appreciate you joining me on today's video. Like I said, leave a like, a rating of some sort. It would mean a lot to me if you do. Also, be sure to share the show and subscribe, because remember, when you join the Liverpool Latest family, you never walk alone. Thank you to FanArch, as always, for the opportunity, and I will see you guys on tomorrow's episode.